You remember all those promises Trump made during the campaign? Rent would get lower, gas prices and grocery prices would drop on day one. The war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza would be over on day one. But none of that happened. Grocery prices are still up. Gas prices are still up. Rent prices are continuing to go up with no end in sight. The war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, both raging with no end in sight there either. But you can add two more things to that list of things he lied about. No tax on tips and no tax on overtime. Welcome to Unapologetically Progressive. Let's talk about it. Now, what he's going to do instead is give you tax credits. How is that helpful? When he said no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, your overtime and your tips are still going to get taxed. Your paycheck is not going to get bigger. Millions of Americans voted for Trump thinking their paychecks were going to get bigger because they either work overtime or they work on hourly wage with tips. Millions of Americans voted for him for that. And now they're not going to get that. Right? Now they're not getting that at all. They're going to get you're going to get a little tax credit that may not even cover the entirety of your overtime or your tips that were the taxes you paid on them. And for overtime, it's even worse. It's only going to cover about 20% of your overtime. If you go over that, then over and above that, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get any kind of rebate or anything for it. At least how I've understood the bill. Also, though, you're supposed to be getting a tax credit, right? But there's not going to be any requirement in the bill to require your employer to show in your W-2 that you worked overtime, or the amount of taxes you paid on that overtime. So literally, you're not going to get a tax credit unless, you can provide evidence of that, right? Which could make filing taxes a little more difficult for people. But this is another one of those ploys he had out there to convince people to vote for him, even though he had no plan. So they're not going to do no tax on tips. And so much for your no tax on overtime. Now, I would say I'm surprised. I'm not. I've known Donald Trump was a liar since the day he came down that escalator in 2015. The day he got out there and said that all the Mexican people coming across the border were rapists, murderers, and drug dealers. I knew he was a liar from the start. And things haven't changed. He's gotten even worse. He lied to you about everything. And I'm sorry for any of you that believe him. But right now, this bill that they're passing, or trying to pass anyway, has you a tax credit for your overtime and your tips, which probably won't cover all the taxes that you paid on either of those. And they're giving a massive $4.5 trillion tax cut over the next 10 years to the billionaire class on your back. Once again, I want to make it very clear that you shouldn't be punching down against people that are worse off than you are. That lady buying food for their kids with food stamps isn't the reason you're paying so much in taxes. Literally, you pay like $1.50 a year in your taxes if you're a working class American for people to be on food stamps. Like $1.50, $1.70 a year. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, does it? But the people that are costing you money, that are actually hurting you, the billionaire class. Because the poor and the working class are being left out of everything. And it continues nonstop. It's been this way at least since the early 80s. And now they've completely destroyed the middle class. They're selling out the working class completely in this country to the point where the working class is just going to have to subsist on whatever they can find. The whole goal is to keep you poor so you can work for them. That's the whole goal of this whole plan, this whole economic plan of theirs. Is to make the working class so poor that they're desperate for any kind of work and that they'll take any kind of pay. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to break the backs of the poor, while all along lying to you and promising you things like no tax on tips, that your grocery bill is going to get lower, that your paycheck is going to get bigger, and your grocery bills are going to go down, your rent's going to go down, and you're not going to have all these other fees to pay. But then they're going to say, "Oh no, you're not going to get it that way. We're going to give you a tax credit, but we're not going to require your employer to show in your W-2 that you worked overtime at any point during the year." How is that okay? I really don't think it is. I truly believe there is a war going on in this country. And it's not left and right. It's top and bottom. The billionaire class is destroying the working class and the poor in this country. That is what they are doing. That is what they are aiming for. Anyhow, if you like the content here at Unapologetic Progressive, please hit the subscribe button. If you have any ideas on what to do about this kind of stuff, hit me up in the comments down below. Try to be respectful if you can. And talk to your state representative, your U.S. representatives in Congress and in the Senate. Let them know that you want your no tax on tips. Demand it. Anyhow, I'll see you down the road.